Hello and welcome back to Overbooked. I'm Amanda and it has been, oh my god, and it has been a while. So I've been away for a long time. I think this is the longest stretch of time I haven't posted a video. I was finishing up my class and I finished in May, and I thought I was gonna dive back in, and I actually kind of liked having the break. So here we are, and it's June, but I wanted to do a big wrap up of all the books I read in May and June, or April and May. So I am gonna go over that today, and we're gonna talk about all of those books because it's kind of been a lot, slash not that much if you think about it, broken down. But I'm gonna try to keep the book descriptions brief and to the point and concise, but without further ado, let's get back into booktube. I've missed you guys. I've missed this. I've missed talking about books. The first book that I finished all the way back in April was the Incendiaries? The Incendiaries? I think that's how you say it. By R.O. Kwon. Whew. So this is the problem with wrapping up 2 months later, because I don't really remember what this book's about. Let me think. Okay. The Incendiaries follows this kind of like a group of people, but mainly we focus on one girl who is a main character and a boy who is another main character. And they're in like somewhat of a relationship, and the girl falls into this cult, and we're kind of watching it happen. And we're getting the perspective of the girl and the boy, and they're also kind of getting brief perspectives from the cult leader. And I was really excited going into this book. Like, I thought it was a really fascinating plot line. I don't really know a lot about cults. I thought it was going to be kind of really interesting to learn about, which that part was kind of fascinating to see how somebody could fall into a cult. And if it's like, in this case, you know, our main character was kind of like, she was lacking this part of her life, and so she needed to fill that kind of void, and this kind of helped her fill that void. It gave her a place to belong, and that kind of understanding and background information was really cool to see, but I just didn't like it as much as I thought I would. I would have liked to see more of the thought process. I think I would have liked to see it more from a singular character. The boyfriend, who we also saw the perspective of, was just kind of really annoying. I thought he was too, like, I need to save her kind of mentality, just kind of like because he thought he needed to, not because he actually wanted to. And I also so I listened to this book on audio, and I was very confused with the characters, and I think it would have been easier to follow as a paper, like reading the physical book, because there were some parts where I was confused on what male character was speaking, because there was a couple other characters, and I was like, I thought we were only seeing the perspective of 2 characters, and then I was like, who is this person talking? I was just kind of genuinely confused. I also would have liked a deeper dive into like the mind of the cult leader, which I understand like why his parts of the book were brief, because it kind of just gives us a quick glimpse. Like, we don't really know the full story versus kind of like connect the dots ourselves, but I just would have liked a more rounded out thing, and that's not what I got. So that is my thoughts. I thought it was interesting and captivating for the most part, but overall I think I just gave it 3 stars. So the next book I listened to a lot of audiobooks in April, was Shrill Notes from a Loud Woman by Lindy West. So this is one of the books, actually both this and Incendiaries is like how I'm going like reverse order on my Goodreads to try to catch up with some of the books I put on there like 3 years ago. And this is one of them. And this is one of the books I just kept pushing off and not wanting to pick up. I didn't want to read it. I would go through the list and I would just skip it because I just rolled my eyes. But I finally just took the dive and I loved it. I absolutely loved this book. I thought it was amazing. So this is Lindy West's like sort of like memoir essentially, but just how she, like what her life has been like in, you know, in comedy, as a female, in the TV industry, in media industry, and as a fat woman, and just like how that all has impacted her and affected her. And it was just so refreshing and funny And I honestly, I think still time relevant. I was kind of a little worried going into this book that she wouldn't, you know, address how she, you know, is still privileged as a white woman, but she does address that. And this was written in like 2016, so I still think it's pretty timely. I really enjoyed it. There was a part where she's in this like diet group. It's like one of my favorite parts, and it was like her and this other man who are like the only fat people in this group. The rest of them are like, you know, middle-aged moms, white moms who just want to lose 5 pounds, that they're already skinny. No one knows why they're here. Lindy was like, I spoke up and said, you know, even after I have my meal, I'm still hungry. You know, what should I do? And like the person running their meeting is like, have you tried having an almond or an apple? It was just like so funny. Like her response to that question, like internally, is like, if you have ever had to try, like if you've ever tried to have a fucking almond to suppress your hunger, then you know it doesn't fucking work. And it's just hilarious and just so like relatable, you know? I think a lot of us women who are pressured to be a certain size, a certain weight, are like, you know, we feel that way as well. And it, like, at the end of the day, sometimes I don't want a fucking almond or an apple. So it doesn't matter. But loved that book. I gave it like, I think 4 or 5 stars. It was pretty good. There were some parts where I think stretched on a little bit too much, but overall I thought it was really great. So the next book I read was How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House by Sherry Jones, and I read this for the Book of Sense book club, which I have not attended since the first book club meeting. And I don't know when I'll be able to attend next, because the next 2 books I can't get them from my library. So I either need to figure out how to buy them or what's going on, because that is still one of my goals, is to read all of the books that she picks for it this year. But How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House is kind of this like, I don't know if you'd say it's a mystery, but it focuses on this woman who is in this like abusive and mentally abusive relationship with a man and he ends up committing a crime that's very serious and affects everyone around her and around them. And we follow her story, and then we follow like the characters around her. So everyone kind of has their own little story in the book and their own chapters, which I really, really loved. And this is how I wanted, maybe this is how I wanted Incendiaries to be, because I feel like everyone's like character development and storyline was really flushed out really well, and I just really loved that. And we see how this crime impacts each person differently and from different views and from different ways, and like, you know, the different results from this, you know, reaction, this chain reaction from this one event. And it was just really, really, really good. And I actually really enjoyed it. So I definitely recommend How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House. So the next book I finished was A Promised Land by Barack Obama. So I listened to this on audiobook, and I'm really proud of myself because I finished this in I think just 20 days, which I only had 21 days on Libby, and you know, I did it. But it did require me to listen to Barack Obama literally every day whenever I had a free second. So obviously, you know, this is Obama's book about his presidency in the White House for his 8 years. And I thought it was good. There was a lot of parts that weirdly just made me start tearing up and crying. I think his beginning, he reflects, his like introduction kind of reflects on like what's going on with the COVID and stuff, and I just start crying. Anytime anyone starts talking about COVID, I just start crying. There was a lot of instances that I really liked about the book. I really liked the deep dive into like the 2008 crash and like the housing market and all of that stuff, because I feel like I was really removed. I was younger. I also was in I don't really know. I've talked to my parents a couple times, and I don't really know if the state that I grew up in, South Dakota, was really that affected by the crash. So I just don't have a lot of knowledge on it, and I felt like I got a lot of insight into that. But the thing is, and I think a lot of people have said this, is the book is really long. It's very long, obviously. It was like over 20 hours, and it's like just very long. And I think there's a lot of parts that could have been taken out. I think a lot of times when I was listening to the book, I just drifted off. Wasn't paying attention, and I came back pretty easily it's just, he likes to talk about each person he's describing to you. He likes to describe their personality, how they look, what they did, who they are, and at certain points I just don't care about, you know, this one person that's only going to be talked about for 5 pages. And if you're spending the first 3 pages just telling me about them, it's kind of like, I don't really care. So I love Barack Obama, I love Mr. President, but some of that stuff, it needed to be cut. I was like, okay. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I loved listening to it. I got a lot of insight into it. I wasn't very politically involved during his presidency, which is on me. So I learned a lot, and I'm glad I read it. So the next book is Aftershocks by Nadia Owasso. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. And this is the author's memoir. This is another Book of Sense book club pick. And I also wanted to love this book, and I just didn't love it as much as I wanted to and thought I would. We follow Nadia. She is suffering through depression. She lost her mom, or not her mom, her father as a child. She was like kind of estranged from her mother. She has kind of like a unique childhood where she was a child of a like United Nations employee or person. Like, so her dad worked for the United Nations, so they traveled a lot, and she lived in a lot of different countries. So she had a lot of different global experiences, but also as like this like sort of privileged UN child, but then also, you know, being a Black woman in society. And so she moved to the United States when she was like 18 and had this whole different experience here as well. I thought that a lot of her experiences were definitely unique and interesting to read about, but for some reason I just wasn't captivated. I found myself just kind of really not looking forward to picking it up, or kind of just not really getting into the story, which I wish I would. And I don't think, if you've heard about Aftershocks or if you've been curious, I still think that you should check it out. I think that my voice is probably in the minority, and I just think it just was something that I just didn't connect to for some reason. I think there's just sometimes, as a reader, there's just some books that you just pick up and you just don't like them, and you just don't know why. You just didn't like them. And this is one of them. I don't think there was anything wrong with it. I think her writing was really good, and there's interesting stories, and obviously a very unique perspective. And so I think if you're thinking about Aftershocks, I think you should still check it out. Another book I listened to on audio was The Making of Asian America, A History by Erica Lee. So I read this because May is Asian American Pacific Islander month, and I really like to read like a big like full history nonfiction kind of book on the culture being celebrated during that month, because I think it also just gives me a lot of background information when I read other books that surround that culture and identity, so I can really like connect the dots when I'm reading. And I think this one was a really good comprehensive look at the history of Asian Americans in the United States. And I mean, there's not really much else to say. I learned a lot. It's just literally a complete history from when the first Asian Americans came over to the Americas and, you know, to today. And I found just a lot of things really interesting. And one of them was that a lot of Asians would come into the United States through the Mexican border, and they were actually one of the first, I think they were the first illegal immigrants. And I just thought that was really interesting and fascinating to learn. So I'm just really glad that I read this. Something that I was looking at when I was, you know, scrolling through Instagram during the month of May was, you know, a lot of these books that people urge you to read during, you know, Black History Month or Asian American Month or Native American Month or whatever month it may be. I think that we really have to make sure that we remember to not just read like one singular book or one singular story from one singular voice. Just because this was a complete history doesn't mean that it encompasses, you know, every Asian American story. It doesn't highlight everything. So I think that there was a post that I saw that was like, make sure you're reading, you know, from all different perspectives, from a wide range of Asian American voices. And so definitely keeping that in mind going forward. I already have a lot of, some other books on my list to read and check out. I really want to read, I think it's called Minor Feelings. I really want to get to that next. So I just a friendly reminder, because I thought it was nice to remind myself when I saw that, like, just don't pick, these certain set of books because you see them everywhere. Just make sure you're really reading a wide range, and obviously not just in the month of May or whatever month we're talking about, but throughout the year. Otherwise, I gave this nonfiction book 5 stars because I love nonfiction and I thought it was just a really fascinating work, and it looked like a lot of research and time went into it, so it was great. The next book I finished was The Women of the Copper County by Mary Doria Russell. So I found this book through my coworker. She sent me like a link through this like Michigan Reads website or something. So this book is set in the UP of Michigan in the early 1900s. So and it's based on a true story. And I guess there is a county in the UP of Michigan that's like used to be known for coal mining, and there was a strike that happened in the early 1900s there that was ran by a group of women in order to get better wages and better working conditions, and it went on for a very long time. So this book covers the events that took place, the strike that happened, the characters within it. Some details obviously were changed, and it's loosely based on that event. When I read the author's note, I noticed that some things kind of were changed, mainly like just like the characters, like relationships, like not like historical facts, but that kind of stuff. But I enjoyed it for the most part. It wasn't amazing, and it wasn't a great historical fiction book, not my favorite by any means, but it's definitely a different look at something I've read. And I think a lot of us, especially me, I get hooked up on like the World Wars historical fiction or the Great Depression, and I just think this is like a different topic for historical fiction that was nice to get away, and it was also looking at the state that I live in, so that was really cool. I gave it 3 stars just because it just didn't super hook me, but it was a good basic story, and that sounds really rude, but I mean, it was like easy to get through. It was like interesting to get into. When I was reading it, I was interested, I was hooked. The only problem was like I would be really into reading, and then I'd have to stop reading for something, I'd have to go do something, and I wasn't captivated to go back in. But once I was reading it, I was pretty captivated. The next book I read was The Tradition by Jericho Brown, and I read this for the Stacks book club, and this was a work of poetry, and I don't usually read poetry, so I don't think that you should take my review with a grain of salt. I loved it. I thought it was really good. I think I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads, but I just thought the poetry was really good and captivating and beautiful to read. I think I read it all in one sitting, but I don't really know. Also, I got a lot out of it from reading it that fast and that quickly. I'm not quite sure how to read poetry or how to take it all in, so take that as you will. But we follow Jericho Brown really just kind of like does a lot of poems that kind of are like based on his life as a Black man, as a gay man, and just really, really beautiful, and I thought really powerful, but also without like telling you bluntly what it's about. You kind of really have to like infer. So I thought it was really cute and really beautiful and good. So the next book that I read was An Elderly Lady is Up to No Good by Helen Torsten. And this was actually really interesting. I got this book recommendation from a Sunny Book Nook, so I'll link her down below. And I also read this for a Reading Women Challenge, which was a protagonist over the age of 50. So I'm gonna do a separate book review on this. And but this was just really good. It's just a really short book, and it's just a collection of stories about our main character, who is an elderly woman. She's in her 80s, and she's just literally up to no good. She's constantly doing some crimes, and she's getting away with it because she is an old lady, and no one expects this old lady to be doing these crimes. So it's just kind of like funny, which is not what you would really want to describe it as the crimes that are happening in this book. But it is kind of funny, and it's just funny and interesting, and just the whole time I'm like, I wonder what she's gonna do next. And she's just trying to like live her life and people just keep getting her in her way. So she has to, you know, take care of business. So it was really good. I gave it 5 stars. I am so glad that a Sunny Book Nook talked about this book. Otherwise, I would never ever have known about it. So it was really good. Great way to spend. I spent my day off from work reading this entire book, and it was a day well spent. Okay, so then finally, the last book that I have finished reading in the month of May was Heartberries by Therese Marie Melhot, and this is her memoir, and I absolutely loved this. This details her memoir as an Indigenous woman suffering with, I think it's bipolar and PTSD, and just dealing with all of the things that she's gone through in her life. She is committed to a psych ward, I believe it was, well, hospitalized for those conditions, and she writes about that experience in such a raw and open manner, and also just like completely just, you know, just telling you what happened, and I just really appreciated that, and just, it was just beautiful. I can't really describe the words to any better than that. They were just really, really beautiful. I think I've mentioned this on my channel before. I have some family members who suffer from mental illness, and this was just really, I don't know if refreshing is the right word, but it was just like nice to see somebody she's really just unapologetic about who she is and how she is, and it's just so beautiful. Again, I don't know any other word to describe it, and she doesn't waste any words. Like, no sentence is wasted, there's no fluff, and it's just used very well, and just, she is just an incredible writer, and this was just amazing. So I highly recommend, if you haven't read Heartberries and you like memoirs, this was a really, really good one. Okay, so those were all the books that I have read in April and May. I hope to get back on a once-a-week schedule here, and I'm happy to be back into the book world. I'm happy to be talking about books. I am very behind on my Goodreads goals, so I am really trying to ramp up my reading. So here we go. And I have also created a Bookstagram, so you can follow along with me as I read books. I'm trying to post on a regular schedule, or at least a couple times a week on there, so check me out there. I'll link it below. And all right, so I hope you guys have all been doing well, and I hope you guys are staying safe and staying healthy, and I hope your guys' reading is going splendidly. And thank you for watching. I will see you guys next time.